So this quick video is going to be about using some very basic functionality to kind of model and edit your data on ArcGIS Online. So as a reminder here, we're in a web map on ArcGIS Online. That web map has several feature layers that are essentially guiding what our data looks like, what information is stored about them. And the way that ArcGIS Online works is all those additional tools that we power, whether it is a story map so we can interactively tell a narrative through spatial analytics, a web-based app that we're giving someone, or the ArcGIS Collector app, where we're going out and collecting information about parcels. Everything that we see in those apps is powered by a map and its layers behind the scenes. So consider this like the source code or the foundation that filters through all of those things. So if you want to be able to collect some kind of information in Collector or depict a certain symbology or a field in a web app, you need to make the edits here, and then they will reflect in each of those applications. So that's really all I want to do right now, is just show you how you can make some real quick edits to your information. What we have here is parcels in the south side of Chicago. Right now they're being symbolized by one of their fields, which is their land use. And if you hover over a file, what you'll see is you have a lot of options here, and then a couple that are hidden in this more section. We're not going to go through each one, but we are going to go through a couple. I think one of the first important ones to go through here is the table. So click on the table. Just a different view from what you've seen before. Remember, each of these parcels is a record. It's a feature. Each parcel has information about it. That's essentially what you're looking at here. All right, you can scroll to the left or scroll to the right with your arrows. And the cool thing is you can go up here under table options. All right, first go here, because this shows you what of all the attributes you have that you're showing. That's cool. All right, but more importantly, if you come under table options, you can filter, you can select, and I think most critically, you can actually add a field. So while there's some kinds of editing that you can only do in ArcGIS Desktop and then you have to bring back online, you do have capabilities in Arc Online to just add fields. And the cool thing about that is when you're adding a field, you're adding your ability to collect that field. And then when you come back to desktop or export as a CSV, that information should be there. So if you go to add field, and you can give it a name. Let's say we're having a field because we want to, mark that something was collected. We'll say collect field. We can make it a string, an integer, whatever we want, and I'll add a new field. So it's saving. All right, so do not be discouraged at first. It's going to make it look like, well, I guess it didn't. Sometimes if you don't see it, right, if that field doesn't pop up, don't be discouraged. It just means you have to click this plus and you have to turn it on. In addition, when you click on a parcel, it may or may not have turned itself on, right? If it didn't turn itself on, I'm going to show you in a minute how you would be able to do that. But now the neat thing is, now this is something I can collect. If I collected information on that, I'll just come down to collect and I'll say yes. And it would be the same exact principle that you would use when you're working on ArcGIS Online. Or sorry, on the ArcGIS Collector app. And there we go, now collect field is there. So when you look at something's table, you can do a lot of other stuff with it too. You can click on each field individually. You can sort by those. You can also do a field calculation. Like let's say you had census tracts and you knew how big they were and you knew how many people were in them. You could create a new field that was population per square mile, and you could set up a calculation to do that. All right, so you do have some functionality in ArcGIS Online to mess around with table values, and these are essentially how you do it. With the calculate field, and I'm not going to do it, but it's pretty neat. I can take on values. Like let's say I wanted my collect field to just take on the values of development opportunity. I could, and it would equal that. I have all kinds of functions that I can do, right? I'm certainly not going to use this to go into the many functions, but I can make everything uppercase, make everything lowercase. I can take the absolute value, so on and so forth. You have the ability to collect field or calculate field values in ArcGIS Online. The next important thing is symbology here. And so for symbology here, first thing you always do is you pick an attribute. So there's really like two types of symbology, right? You either show everything as the same color or the same shape or the same size, or you use a field value, right? They each have an attribute that dictates what they are. Some of those attributes will be similar to others, right? So anyone who has a multifamily stored as an attribute, we know that to mean that that's a multifamily property. And we can be able to show that if we want. So you simply pick an attribute that you'd want to show. And then you can pick the different types, right? You can label the colors, whether it's a visible range. You also have the opportunity, I'm not going to do it now, if you want to pick a numeric field, like permit value, right? It'll actually switch to counts and colors, and you can pick the different counts and the colors, the high to low breaks that you want to do. Maybe there'll be a better field for this. Let's see, what do we have here? Permit value. I guess that's really the best one I have here. Permit value, and then you can set your breaks here. Classify the data as you want. Right, maybe any permit under, come back down and say you need to be under 50,000, you need to be under 100,000, and you need to be under 200. Right. It doesn't make too much of a difference because some of my fields don't have permit values, but it's a way that I can symbolize the data, so I could really easily click and I would go to permit value and find that this one is in fact greater than $200,000. Right, so a lot of different ways to mess with your symbology there. The next most critical point here is filter. Filter is essentially what allows you to take the data as it exists here and only view subsections of it based on attribute values. For example, when we were collecting data here, one of the things we collected was whether a parcel was active or whether it was like a piece of vacant property, not vacant land, but like a vacant building. And so all kinds of ways you can pick the field you want. And so we'll say, make it easy. How about the collected land use, or whoops, collected, let's do just a land use ID for mapping, and that land use is, right, you can make it equal to another field, you can type in your own value, or you can go to unique, which is pretty cool, and they'll give you all the unique values you could choose from. The land use is vacant, apply filters, and there you go, only my vacant land comes up. And you can do, as many filters as you want. Now maybe I want to edit my filter. Okay, I want this. I want to add another expression. Okay, so the land use is vacant. And, oh goodness, what else do we have here? See how many of those are confirmed parking lots, or rather not. Let's see how many of those, yeah, fuck it. How many of those are have parking lots? All right, we'll confirm those that are vacant and parking. Only a couple of them are vacant and parking that we collected right there. And when you're finished, you can come up here, remove the filter, and it'll go back to normal. When you click on this, a lot of stuff you can play with. We're not going to mess with too much. You can zoom. You can make your whole thing transparent so you can see through it. Visibility range is for big files, so if you're zooming out, it doesn't draw the whole thing and crash your computer. You can rename it. You can remove it. You can make a copy. I think the most critical other element that I want to show you right here are really two. The first is configure the pop-up. A pop-up essentially is when I click on something, what information comes up? What can I see about it? And what can I edit? And this is really critical because if you're out there with a collector, you're only going to be able to see and edit values that you've allowed the user to be able to see and edit. And you control that by simply going to configure pop-up. All right, you can add a title. You can choose how you want to display. Right, in this instance, I want to display a whole list of attributes. Then I can configure which attributes I want. And this is really cool, right? It organizes like this. Show it. Make it editable. Behind the scenes, what its actual name is, and what we as human beings want its name to be, right? So that we can see it and understand it a lot easier, because not everybody might understand what structure C means. Oh, it actually means structure condition. And if you just go to the bottom, you'll see our field. Remember I told you that I added. I've seen sometimes when you add a new field, for some reason it doesn't display, but you just change it here. Say I want that to display, and I want it to be editable. And hit OK. And these will be the values that are saved in your ability to collect. And that's essentially how you work with pop-up boxes. Final and most important thing that I'm not going to do here would simply be to just save the layer. When you make changes, you want to save it so that the actual feature layer that's powering the map behind the scenes, the new fields or the new field calculations have been saved. And once you do that, and you go up here and hit save as well, make sure you save your map. What you've essentially done is you've made edits to the base layers in your map that are then going to power all the other applications that you use.